welcome to Toronto Footy TV. My name is Ryan May. I'm here with Owen Hall, Samir Murji, and Toronto FC lost their opening game of the home season. 4-1 against the New York Red Bulls. It was not very fun. Samir and I were there. Samir, what was your first impression of the actual match while you were in the stadium?
Honestly, it was disappointing. First game in front of fans in 2 years, in front of a packed stadium in 2 years, and the team disappointed. Like losing 4-1. Not only that, letting someone get a hat trick against you.
A first half hat trick, a 40-minute hat trick.
Exactly, in the first half of the game. And not only that, all three of the goals were assisted by the same player who was terrorizing the defense all night.
Are we sure there was a defense there, bro? I'm not convinced that there actually was.
I know, but it was Patrick Kilmala.
Yeah, and the hat trick, by the way, Lewis Morgan.
Yeah, thank you. And but Kilmala, the striker, number 9 for New York, was terrorizing the Toronto defense all night, not only picking up those 3 assists, but also forcing the yellow card on our Salcedo. Sorry.
Yeah.
And it was disappointing to say the least for the 4th time.
Yeah, and I can't lie. There are 2 other things that also disappointed me about the match. The match at BMO Field in particular, the pitch looked awful. Absolutely looked like a English League One pitch. It was not acceptable for the level of club that Toronto FC are, and I think the support was a little bit muted. There was 23,000 people there, but the atmosphere wasn't how I felt it at past TFC games. Maybe it's just get the sort of post-COVID hangover. I'm not entirely sure.
I think it was those 3 goals in the first half. I think that's a great way to take the wind out of supporters' sails, and it's hard to come back from that. I mean, they shut up shop a little bit in the second half, but it didn't really seem like there was much in the game after that, to be honest with you.
And not only that, I agree with you, Owen, but not only that, after the 2 goals, before he got the 3rd one, like when TFC got the goal to make it 2-1, being in the stands, we felt like things were going to be different. We felt it in the air.
It did feel like there was a switch coming.
We thought things were going to change. But then 5 minutes later, Red Bulls just get a lucky bounce to get the breakaway goal for the hat trick. And it just like completely took the wind out of the sails of the team. You saw it. But before any goals were scored, it seemed like the team didn't have any wind in their sails. Like the team didn't look like they knew what they were doing out there, especially defensively. They looked really sloppy and looked lost. I mean, specifically on the right side of defense, I saw them struggling, especially with them playing a little too narrow. There wasn't enough width out there, and New York was taking advantage of that. And it was hard to see.
Yeah, well, we were talking about it while we were looking at it on the pitch, and it was kind of like Marshall Ruddy and Jaden Nelson were covering the same area, and neither of them were far enough wide.
Yep.
And so there was just Toronto essentially had shifted their entire 11 towards the right side of the pitch, left side of the pitch rather, and it didn't work. It was really, really hard going. But from basically about 20 minutes in.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to sort of counter what you said. Yes, they looked discombobulated. They started the game offensively with a reasonable amount of the ball, of like attacking sort of determination. But did they do anything with it? No, they did not. Did they look like they could actually score? No, they didn't, because they were disorganized from the back. Disorganized the whole way.
Yeah, and even though they had the ball a little bit in the beginning of the game, it looked like New York was going to score every time they got that counterattack. And that's exactly what happened, right? Like, New York would just find one little counter to go. And to be honest, I hate blaming the goalkeeper, but maybe Bono should have had maybe a couple of them. Mm-hmm. But either way, he was put under pressure, and you never want to put your goalie under that pressure.
Yeah, I think Bono definitely had a rough game, not what he was looking for in terms of a home debut this season. But like you talked about that side with Marshall Ruddy and Jaden Nelson. And I think space is a major factor in the game of football. And the New York Red Bulls were absolutely eating in that left half space, and it also seemed like Michael Bradley was a little bit off the pace. Getting used to a new system. I mean, it is his dad, so he should, be.
How new is that system really?
Have a little bit of chemistry. But yeah, I found there was a lot of space. I was glad to see Ralph Priso coming back. Again, not many players on the field had their greatest game. Good for Jesus Jimenez to get a goal. That's always great for confidence. Very well taken, very, very composed goal.
Mm-hmm.
One of the few bright spots. But yeah, I think getting used to a new system is definitely going to take some time. And we have a lot of academy players filling some spots this year, and I think we're going to have some growing pains. I think there's going to be a lot of pain in growing this year.
Oh.
Yeah, and one person you mentioned, Petrasso, I do want to shout him out. He did play.
I was just going to get there. I think you're right.
I'm not going to say he played really well because, of course,
he was part of a defending unit that lost 4-1.
But he did have bright spots, and he was not afraid to take on his defender multiple times, and he did beat the defender multiple times. So it was he had a great cameo today.
Yeah, it was his debut. So there were 3 debuts. Luca Petrasso, Caden Chung, and Luke McNaughton all made their TFC debuts today. And Petrasso just had quite a difficult job. He had to start out in midfield where they were getting overrun. And then when Schaffelberg pulled up with a thigh injury towards the end of the first half, he had to slot into left back. And obviously, as a midfielder making your debut for TFC, it's not exactly what you want to do, but I thought he did a good job. I thought they shut up shop, obviously, in the second half, and they were defensively ever so slightly more organized. It's a stretch because the whole thing was very discombobulated, and it looked like nobody really knew their roles in the defense. And so what I'm going to sort of now transition into, because we've been through what went wrong, Everything went wrong. The only thing that went right was Jimenez's goal. Let's talk about the fullback situation, and then we're going to talk about the center backs, because this defense is shambolic. There's no two ways about it. What is the reasoning for persisting with Marshall Ruddy
I'm glad
in that position?
I'm glad you just said his name.
I don't understand.
I was just pulling up his player profile right here on my phone. I was just looking at him right now.
Is he a wing?
To talk
is he profiled
about him,
as a winger?
He's profiled as a defender.
Okay.
He is a wing back, but Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy is struggling, in my opinion, positionally, in defensively these first 2 games. I know he played pretty well offensively, moving forward against FC Dallas the week before, and he had high praise for that, but he's playing a little too narrow, in my opinion. Like you mentioned, he's occupying the same spaces as Nelson, and it's causing a problem in the back only because it's causing his center backs to have to cover the spaces that he's not covering. And when that happens, the center backs have to shift a little bit more to the right, and it causes space in the left, and it causes the players on the left to have to play perfectly. And if the players on the left don't play perfectly, which happened multiple times in the first half in today's game, we're going to let in leaks, let in chances against our goalkeeper, and our goalkeeper's going to have to make the save, which he didn't. And honestly, to be honest, in the first goal, he couldn't have made a save.
No, that was the only one where you might say that that was
a beautiful shot, beautiful finish. One-timer, I believe. There's nothing really he could do. And I just... It upsets me that they're insisting on having Marshall Ruddy on the right back. I mean, I do see the potential that he has.
I see the potential in him as a player.
Yes, and I see how amazing he can be moving forward. But right now, I think the team needs to find an identity defensively, and it's hard to do that when you need to cover different spaces.
Whenever a new manager comes into the team, there's always a big question around philosophy, whether the personnel should fit around the system or whether the system should fit around the personnel. And I think, it takes some courage to drop a guy in a position or role that he's not very comfortable with. And I think if we're going to persist with that, if we're going to persist with Bradley's system, he likes those fullbacks that like to get up. Stephen Beitashour played for him in LA for a while, former TFC player. But I think if we are going to persist with Marshall Ruddy, there has to be some sort of patience. He was in the team of the week last week, like you said. He did well going forward, but defensively, in terms of positionally, he's not there yet. And a lot of people wouldn't expect him to be. None of us expect him to be. But I mean, Jacob Schaffelberg has similar issues. Schaffelberg with a little bit more experience. He has a great left foot.
I also thought he looked good today until he had pulled up with the injury.
Yeah, great left foot. Largely responsible for Azorio's goal in Dallas last week. But yeah, and I talked about growing pains before, and I think this is going to be a season where we'll definitely have some bright spots when Lorenzo comes through and Crescito joins the team, hopefully. But
if it ever happens, we've been it's still not officially confirmed with Crescito. I think it's been unofficially confirmed 14,000 times.
We've been talking about it for a while, but like I agree with you. I feel like our left back situation is I'm not saying completed and not ready, but like it's handled for the future.
He's 35 though. Like we have to temper our expectations.
Well, we're not talking about
Crescito.
Like Crescito will handle it right now, but we have Schaffelberg and everyone who's been playing like decently well on the left back position, who, like you said, with patience and will get used to the system, and we can rely on them. But on the right side is where I'm more concerned. I mean, I do believe that Marshall Ruddy eventually will blossom into a great player, but I don't see him fitting into the system if he persists to play the way he likes to play. And if he doesn't play the way he likes to play, that takes away from his strengths, and that takes away from what will make him one of the better players, which I believe he could blossom in a different type of system. So maybe it's something to do with Bob Bradley's system or Bob Bradley as a manager for TFC. It's a little too early to call anything on that. It is 2 games into it. So it was just really disappointing today. I haven't gone to a TFC game in person and seen our team play like that from beginning to end, so deflated. Like I've never seen that. There was no heart in the team. They honestly didn't look like they believed they were going to win from the start. And throughout the game, the individual players would get frustrated.
Jimenez was consistently frustrated, throwing his arms in the air. Like there was a lot of frustration on the pitch from the moment they got out there, and it was very, very telling.
And it wasn't just
environment might be like.
And it wasn't just Jimenez. Like you could see his teammates get pissed off because he's getting pissed off, and then you could see Salcedo just get pissed off because they're losing. And when he got the yellow card, it was out of frustration. Like it's tough when that's the home opener and that's the attitude you get from the players. It's tough seeing that. And that's why when you asked me how I can describe today's game, it was just disappointment, because overall, not just the way they played, but it's the way the players acted. It's the way they acted in defeat, and it's the way they showed Toronto what they can be. Like a lot of people are talking about how much better this team is going to be this season, and this is the performance they pull out their first game at home.
I haven't looked at it that way.
Yeah, and not that many people are going to be excited to come to TFC games, right? Like new fans, if they keep performing like this, it's sad.
I find the body language really interesting, because I think there's a really thin line when it comes to how people perceive you, or maybe your actions outside of the game. But it's great to see passion. It's great to see guys holding their teammates responsible. But I think context plays a big part. If you're just getting mad for the sake of getting mad, then your teammates obviously aren't going to respond well. Jefferson Soteldo with TFC last year frustrated me with his body language just a little bit, because I felt like it impacted the way he was playing. He would put in a cross, and someone wouldn't be on the end of it, or he would wait and try to dribble his way out of a situation. And I found that his body language was actually inhibiting him from getting back into the play or making the right decision. And I think, it's obviously nice to see a guy, Jimenez, be comfortable enough to show those emotions around his new teammates. But like I said, there's a very, very thin line. And especially for the second game, and judging by what you were saying, that line was kind of crossed a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's the reason it was crossed is because it bled into the next play. That's always my issue with the body language situations, when players throw their arms up in frustration and then suddenly, whoops, the ball's bounced back across them and they're too busy looking to the skies. Like those are the kind of things that we did see today.
Yeah. Okay. And sorry, before we move on, it's frustrating, to your point, that continued to go on as the game went on and on, as Toronto were letting in more goals, it was getting worse, which you hate to see.
Okay, so the last thing I want to sort of hit on this particular game, the center back pairing just did not work today. Shane O'Neill and Salcedo together did not do it for me. Obviously, it didn't do it for anybody. They lost 4-1. Something about this disorganized of a defense and having 2 new signings, it's just bizarre.
Yeah, putting TFC aside, just proposing a situation. Imagine if the team that you supported put out 2 center backs who were new signings and then had a fullback on each side that are pretty inexperienced. Like that's not something that you can put out.
Doesn't inspire confidence.
No, and it doesn't inspire confidence for Michael Bradley that's trying to protect them. It doesn't inspire confidence for Bono, who had a tough game. And
That's a very good point.
Yeah, and I don't see what you can do with that long term. I'm sure the 2 center backs will start to fit in a little bit better. Salcedo has to, for the sake of this team. Salcedo has to adapt. And I like the Mavinga Salcedo pairing on the ball. I think they can control games in possession, but none of those combinations in terms of center backs or fullbacks inspire me off the ball. I think there's a massive issue in terms of positioning, and I'm sure, like I said, growing pains. Things will improve with time. But man, these next couple months have the possibility of being extremely rough.
Yeah, they definitely do have a possibility of being extremely rough. And the center back pairing, like you guys both said, it wasn't very inspiring today.
Putting it
but
really
it
nicely,
didn't.
buddy.
It didn't look very. It didn't look much worse than the first half last week with Mavinga and Salcedo, though. Like on the other hand. That they weren't that good either.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what Toronto's gonna do moving forward, like for the near future moving forward. I don't know how they're gonna figure that out. But to be fair, I do think that a reasoning for this is what we talked about earlier, where the inexperienced fullbacks are making the center backs have to cover a little bit too much space right now. And not only that, the rest of the team seems a little bit out of sorts, a little bit out of shape. And they seem a little bit lost, not only defensively, but moving forward. And when you're lost moving forward, you're going to lose the ball and be caught lacking defensively. That's just the nature of the sport.
A lot of people like to talk down on MLS in terms of their technical ability and tactics. But one thing that the MLS is very underrated at in terms of their player base is their athleticism and their fitness. MLS is still an extremely fit league. A lot of our players are extremely athletic, and I think, to me, the easiest way to score is to get those center backs isolated against the wingers, because a lot of these center backs don't have the same speed or quickness or physical ability that a lot of these wingers do. And when you get those center backs isolated, it's going to cause a lot of trouble. And if you have fullbacks that can't defend in the MLS, you're going to have a really, really tough time. And I think Toronto FC has the potential to have a really, really tough time, as I previously said. There's no real way to cover. There's no substitute when it comes to your back four. And Bob Bradley, I'm talking about, has to realize that.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned him. You mentioned Bob Bradley. Now we're gonna jump in. We're 2 games in to the Bob Bradley tenure, 2 official games in, and we have a problem at fullback. We have a problem at center back. We have a problem potentially even scoring goals right now. How much of this is down to personnel, and how much of this is down to either players not knowing the tactics or the tactics being potentially weak? It's a tough question. There's a lot of things at play. There's obviously personnel issues.
I think I think it's too early to say the tactics are a little weak. I feel like we should give them a little bit more time to jump to that conclusion, because I want to say that they're weak right now. I really do. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt right now, and I'm going to say that the players need a little bit more time. I'm going to say that the players, of course, they're great players individually. I mean, we do have a squad that can play a lot better than they are, and they're not showing that in the first 2 games. I think they just need a little bit more time. A lot of good managers, when they first come into a team, the team is shaken up a bit, and it takes not just weeks, it takes months sometimes for the team to play exactly how the manager wants them to, and for the team to play up to the standards of how they should under that system. So I think this is a work in progress, and what Owen said earlier, patience is something that us TFC fans need to have, because that's exactly what this team is and what this young squad is and what the future of TFC is.
I'm having a problem, and the reason I'm having a problem is because of the excitement that came with signing Lorenzo Insigne in the closed season, and that's the only reason I am having a problem with the patience, because it feels like a signing where we should not be in this situation with the best player potentially in the MLS ever about to join our squad. The squad needs to be more, in my opinion, the squad needs to be better before you bring in a player like that, because you have to invest across the board before you just go in head first into the deep end.
But why don't you look at it this way, where it's better that the team's going through this now, that they're figuring out their identity now, so that they're stronger by the time Insigne comes, or that they're stronger in the sense that they're ready for when Insigne comes, they're ready to take off. That might be the case, right? Like, it's better to have those struggles now than have a really good team now who just instantly starts off really good, and then have Insigne come in and shake the chemistry up and shake things up. Like, this team knows that their best player is not here yet. This team knows that the star is about to come, and maybe it's better that the team can figure themselves out and find identity and find a way to play good soccer and good defensive, well-structured soccer, where they actually know what they're doing on the field, where they're not just like chasing a ball and looking around lost, because that's what they look like on the field today. So I think, why don't we look at it that way, right? Like, I know it's hard to not be patient as a TFC fan, but eventually we are going to have that player who may be the best player the MLS has ever seen come to their league currently, like in their current form. Mm-hmm. And we may have that player. So eventually we are going to be good, because when you have a player like that, he'll make players around him better.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion whether it would be better for Insigne to try to impact this team now and claw them out of where they are. I mean, it's only 2 games in. We have a point from 2 games. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but
a little bit. Hold on, one sec before you continue.
Yeah.
Everything that has been discussed today has been a little bit, slightly bit of an overreaction. That's
of course.
That's just part and parcel of the whole
I'm
thing.
upset, man. I was at the game in the cold. One of those fans who got disappointed to the 4-1 loss. So yeah, I have every right to have a bit of an overreaction.
We're in Toronto, man. We love to overreact to our sports. Yeah. Overreacting to our sports is our bread and butter. But
continue. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it would be better to just sort of sort things out, and it may have an impact on where we are in terms of playoff seeding or chemistry. Obviously, it's harder to figure things out late on in the season, but I ultimately do think it's better, because you have these guys who are going to get more of a role, or going to get more touches, and once you sort of drop that spice in there, it's going to explode. And a lot of these guys' games will elevate because of Insigne. Like I said, he's not a ball hog. He's a great playmaker, but he also can finish as well. And when you add Crescito in there for chemistry purposes, and what's really important is that Domenico Crescito and Lorenzo Insigne are both great penalty takers. And TFC have found themselves in a few situations where their penalties have let them down.
They could be in 3 penalty shootouts this year, theoretically.
And not only letting them down, they have been in a lot of penalty shootouts like in recent years. Their tight games.
We missed out on 2 trophies because of them.
Exactly. So that's a great point that you make, that we have shooters that can take it in the moments, and not just one shooter, 2. 3 shooters now with Pezuelo, if we're including him still.
Mm-hmm.
It's a formidable lineup.
It really is. And if someone's not feeling it that day, we can have someone else step up. Like, that's a great asset.
Okay, so the last thing I'm going to get to, Toronto FC are playing their next game at Columbus Crew. It is not going to get a whole lot easier, but hopefully they will be a little bit more organized. Do you guys have any predictions to how this one is going to go, Owen Hall?
Do you want me to be positive?
Yes, please. We need some.
I'll put out a 2-2 draw. Do I believe it? No.
Two draws are
Yeah.
positive now. Look at where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, look, putting 2 goals in the back of the net and
It would be
coming home with a point wouldn't be so bad. But I'll say 2-2 draw or a 3-1 loss.
Samir Murji.
I'm gonna have to agree with Owen on a 3-1 loss there. Maybe a 2-0 loss or 2-1 loss if we're being lucky. The only reason I say that is, I mean, in 2 games, Columbus Crew has scored 7 goals. They won 4-0 against Vancouver Whitecaps and then just tied 3-3 this weekend. The only positive I see from that is they let in 3 goals today and they tied. So that's what I mean. TFC can possibly pull out 1 goal, maybe 2. Hopefully keep it close. I said 3-1 to begin with or 2-1, but I'm going to say 3-2 because it'll be a high-scoring affair, and I believe in TFC. I want to be a little bit more positive. 3-2 will be the final, but I am scared, and they are going to score a lot of goals against us, especially because our defense has been suspect.
You got all the scores covered, eh? No matter what happens, you're gonna come out a winner.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
you pick like
3-2, 2-2, 3-1, 2-1, 2-0.
I picked my final one. You're right on that. But I don't have them all covered because watch it end up being like a 1-0.
Yeah. 0-0.
I think I'm going to go with they're going to get scored on so many times. Unfortunately. And
That's just your prediction right there.
Yeah,
That's
and
just
so
no score. Just
anywhere
gonna get
between
scored on.
like 3-1 and 6-1 I'll probably take.
Whoa.
But like,
You think it's going to be a slaughter?
I think it's going to be a slaughter.
You just say
unfortunately.
you take a 6-1 loss.
At this point, like, I would take anything. Anything that
Wakes
saves
our
us
team up.
coming away without any injuries. And that's where I'm at.
No,
So,
that's fair. Like anything that shakes our team up,
Yeah,
like maybe a big
I'm like-
loss is needed. Like the 4-1 loss, right now they're gonna take it up to like chalk it up to like being
I don't want a
early
6-1. I
and
changed my
being
mind.
being early and being at home. But the way they played, like I don't think this is something that's just early. It reminded me flashes of last season, and I don't think the next month is going to be pretty for Toronto. So I would rather it be a slaughterhouse as well. That way, maybe it'll either light a fire under someone's ass and maybe multiple people's asses, including players
I think
and
maybe
people
management who might want to
Yeah,
spend
and people
some
will
more
play-
money.
and people will play better overall.
I do think Bob Bradley threw a few guys into the deep end in today's game for sure.
They
And
definitely
Yeah.
did.
yeah, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think he's just throwing them in there and see who can complete the deep end test, see who can swim, and see who can come out of there with their heads held high. Because that's also an important thing too. You can't let those performances brand you as a player. Some of these guys have a lot of games ahead, and we'll certainly have a chance because there are a lot of guys coming up from the academy. Will have a chance to prove themselves this season, and it'll be interesting to see who takes those chances and who shies away from them.
Okay, so we're going to be back after the game on March the 12th. We are going to be more positive next time. I can make this promise to you. Whatever happens, we will be more positive.
I'm
Okay?
not making
No,
any
no, no, no,
promises.
no,
I'm not
no,
making
no,
any
no
promises.
promises on that
We are
one.
going to be more positive.
But we'll let
because-
Ryan talk and be more positive a
Yeah,
little
I'm gonna
bit.
okay.
so-
I'm gonna try and be more positive and lead the discussion in a slightly more positive direction because this wasn't fun. Today at BMO Field was not that fun, but
It was nice being there, though.
it was nice being there. It was nice to see Toronto FC live. It's nice to just be in a football ground among fans. Till next time, Ryan May, Samir Murji, Owen Hall for Toronto Footy TV. We'll be back, and we will be back strong.